It was 9:15 a.m. on a Thursday morning when Katt Williams walked into the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta. He wasn't there for any legal trouble of his own. He was responding to a jury duty summons that he couldn't get out of, despite his lawyer's best efforts. The court clerk had made it clear that celebrity status didn't exempt anyone from civic duty. "Great," Katt muttered to himself as he passed through security. Nothing says Thursday morning like jury selection. He found his way to the designated courtroom and took a seat in the back row of the jury pool section, hoping to blend in despite being one of the most recognizable comedians in the country. The room was filled with about 60 potential jurors, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Margaret Chen, a stern-looking Asian woman in her 50s, called the court to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've been called for jury selection in the case of People versus Williams. This is a criminal case involving charges of aggravated assault and battery." As the prosecutor began outlining the case, Katt learned that the defendant was a 19-year-old named Terrell Williams, no relation despite sharing the last name. Terrell was accused of beating up a convenience store clerk during what the prosecutor called an unprovoked attack motivated by racial animosity. But when the defense attorney, a young public defender named Sarah Martinez, stood to give her opening statement, she painted a very different picture. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client Terrell Williams is not the monster the prosecution wants you to believe he is. He's a teenager who was trying to protect his younger sister from harassment and threats. What happened at that convenience store was not a random act of violence. It was a desperate young man who felt he had no other choice." During jury selection, Katt was asked the standard questions about his ability to be impartial. When the prosecutor asked if his celebrity status would affect his judgment, Katt responded honestly, "Your Honor, I've been judged my whole life based on assumptions people make about me. If anything, that makes me more committed to hearing all the facts before making any decisions." Judge Chen nodded approvingly, and despite the prosecutor's obvious reluctance, Katt was selected as juror. The convenience store clerk, a middle-aged white man named Bob Patterson, testified that Terrell had come into his store and went crazy for no reason, attacking him with what Patterson described as pure rage. The store's security footage showed Terrell entering the store, having a brief conversation with Patterson, then suddenly throwing punches. Patterson ended up with a broken nose, black eye, and several bruises. It was unprovoked. Patterson insisted during cross-examination, "I was just doing my job, and this kid attacked me like a wild animal." But during the defense's case, a very different story emerged. Terrell's 14-year-old sister, Keisha, took the stand with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Patterson, he's been bothering me for months," she testified. "Every time I go to that store after school, he makes comments about my body, asks if I have a boyfriend, follows me around the store. I told Terrell because I was scared." "What kind of comments?" Sarah Martinez asked gently. "He said things like I was developing nicely and that he liked watching me bend over to get stuff from the bottom shelf. One time he cornered me by the refrigerators and said I should come work for him when I turned 16 because I had the right assets." Katt felt his jaw clench. He looked around the jury box and could see similar reactions from the other jurors. "Did you tell anyone else about this harassment?" "I told my mom, but she works 2 jobs and said we couldn't afford to shop anywhere else. The other stores are too far away, and we don't have a car." "What did you tell your brother?" "I told Terrell that Mr. Patterson was being creepy and making me uncomfortable. I asked him to come with me to the store because I was scared to go alone." When Terrell took the stand in his own defense, his testimony was quiet but powerful. "I went to that store to protect my sister," he said, his voice steady, despite his obvious nervousness. "When we walked in, Mr. Patterson immediately started looking at Keisha in that way she told me about. Then he said something to her about how she was growing up fast and winked at her." "What happened next?" Sarah asked. "I told him to stop talking to my sister like that. He laughed and said I should mind my own business. Then he said." Terrell paused, his composure cracking slightly. "He said that Keisha seemed to like the attention and that maybe she was asking for it by wearing tight clothes." "What did you do?" "I saw red. My little sister was standing right there, and this grown man was talking about her like she was asking to be harassed. I couldn't let him talk about her that way. During cross-examination, the prosecutor tried to paint Terrell as a violent young man with anger management issues. Mr. Williams, isn't it true that you've been suspended from school for fighting? Yes, but that was for protecting another kid from bullies. So your solution to conflicts is violence? No, sir. My solution is protecting people who can't protect themselves. As the trial progressed, Katt found himself deeply invested in the case. During breaks, he observed Terrell's family, a tired-looking mother who worked as a nursing assistant, trying to raise 2 kids on her own, and Keisha, who kept her head down and stayed close to her brother. During jury deliberations, the room was initially divided. Some jurors felt that regardless of the provocation, Terrell had crossed a line by resorting to violence. He could have called the police, argued Juror 3, a retired teacher named Mrs. Henderson, and said what? Katt responded that a store clerk was making his sister uncomfortable. You think the police would have prioritized that? Violence is never the answer, insisted Juror 9, a bank manager named Robert Kim. I agree, Katt said, but sometimes it's the only language bullies understand. This wasn't some random act of violence. This was a 19-year-old kid who saw his 14-year-old sister being sexually harassed by a grown man in a position of power. But we can't just excuse assault because we understand the motivation, Mrs. Henderson argued. Katt stood up and walked to the window. Let me ask you all something. How many of you have sisters, daughters, nieces? Several hands went up. And if some 40-year-old man was making sexual comments to your 14-year-old daughter, cornering her in stores, making her afraid to go out alone, what would you want your son to do? What would you do? The room fell silent. I'm not saying Terrell handled it perfectly. Katt continued, but I am saying that sometimes good people are forced into impossible situations. And when the system fails to protect the innocent, sometimes individuals have to step up. Juror 5, a young mother named Lisa Chen, spoke up. I keep thinking about what that man said to Keisha, about her asking for it. That's not just harassment, that's predatory behavior. The law is clear about assault, Robert Kim insisted. The law is also clear about sexual harassment of minors, Katt shot back. But which one was being enforced? Patterson had been harassing a child for months, and nothing happened until Terrell intervened. The deliberations continued for 6 hours. Katt found himself becoming an unlikely voice of reason, helping other jurors see past their initial reactions to the deeper issues at play. This case isn't just about Terrell Williams, he told the group during their final discussion. It's about whether we're going to hold people accountable for protecting children, or whether we're going to send the message that kids like Keisha just have to endure harassment because speaking up might lead to violence. What are you suggesting? Mrs. Henderson asked. I'm suggesting that Terrell Williams was protecting his sister from a predator. Was he supposed to just let it continue? File complaints that would probably be ignored while his sister continued to be victimized. So you think he should be acquitted? Lisa asked. I think he should be acquitted of the serious charges, but I think we need to acknowledge that violence happened. Maybe a misdemeanor charge, something that recognizes what he did while also recognizing why he did it. After more discussion, the jury reached a compromise verdict. Guilty of simple battery, a misdemeanor, but not guilty of the more serious charges of aggravated assault. It was a verdict that acknowledged both the violence and the circumstances that led to it. When the verdict was read, Terrell's mother broke down crying. Terrell himself looked relieved but not celebratory. He understood that he would still face consequences, but they would be reasonable given the circumstances. Judge Chen, before dismissing the jury, made an unusual statement. I want to commend this jury for their thoughtful deliberation. This was a complex case with no easy answers, and you've reached a verdict that acknowledges both the seriousness of the defendant's actions and the circumstances that led to them. She then looked directly at Terrell. Miss Williams, while this jury has found you guilty of simple battery, I hope you understand that there were other ways to handle this situation. However, I also understand that you were trying to protect your sister, and that speaks to your character. After court was dismissed, Katt approached Terrell and his family in the hallway. I want you to know something, he told Terrell. What you did took courage. Maybe it wasn't the smartest choice, but it was the right choice in your heart. Terrell's mother, through her tears, grabbed Katt's hand. Thank you. Thank you for seeing my son as more than just another angry young black man. Your son is a protector, Katt replied. The world needs more people like him. 3 months later, Katt received a letter that moved him to tears. It was from Katt Williams, telling him that the publicity from the trial had led to Patterson being investigated by police. They found evidence of inappropriate behavior with other young customers, and he was facing charges. But more importantly, Keisha wrote, Terrell got probation and community service instead of jail time. He's starting college in the fall on a partial scholarship. And me? I'm not afraid to go to the store anymore. Thank you for believing in us. Attached to the letter was a photo of Terrell in a cap and gown at his high school graduation, holding a certificate for academic achievement. Keisha was standing next to him, smiling proudly. Katt kept that photo on his dresser as a reminder that sometimes justice isn't just about following the law. It's about understanding the human story behind the legal case. A year later, when Katt was performing in Atlanta, he spotted familiar faces in the audience. During his set, he called out to them, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet two of my favorite people, Terrell and Katt Williams. These two taught me something important about courage, family, and standing up for what's right." The crowd applauded as Terrell and Katt stood up, both beaming with pride. After the show, Terrell approached Katt backstage. "Mr. Williams, I wanted to thank you again, and I wanted you to know that I'm studying criminal justice now. I want to become a lawyer and help families like mine." "That's beautiful, young man. What kind of law?" "Family law. I want to help kids who feel like the system has failed them." Katt smiled. "Your sister is lucky to have you as a brother, and I'm lucky to have had you as a juror," Terrell replied. Keisha, now 15 and more confident than the scared girl who had testified, hugged Katt goodbye. "Thank you for showing me that sometimes justice and the law aren't the same thing," she said. "And thank you for helping my brother when he needed it most." As Katt watched them leave, he realized that jury duty had taught him something valuable. Sometimes the most important work we do isn't on stage or in front of cameras. Sometimes it's in a jury room, fighting for someone else's truth. Because justice isn't just about punishment, it's about understanding, compassion, and making sure that good people don't pay the ultimate price for doing what they believe is right.